Lucie Blackman was a strikingly tall and beautiful young woman, often seen with a radiant smile in photographs. At one moment of her life, she even worked as a stewardess. Japan really appealed to her because, by the age of 21, Lucie was burdened with a significant debt amounting to £6,000. Neither Lucie nor her friend, with whom she traveled to the land of the rising sun, had the right to work in the country. Both arrived in Japan on a 19th day tourist visa. Upon arrival, they were going to work as hostesses. It's worth understanding that in Japan, hostesses are not those girls or young people who in restaurants book you a table with a smile or escort you to a free seat. These are the very people who sit with you in the bar, spend time with you, chat, joke, in general no intimacy. There are whole establishments, host clubs, where the client can choose which girl he will spend the evening with. Basically, there are just companions for the evening who have a drink with you and flirt with you to a slight degree. Admittedly, there are some specificities. Often, host clubs only pay lip service to these limits, but in fact, periodically send girls to Dohan. This is such a date on the territory of the client where the girl acts as an escort, again without any intimacy. You can earn at these meetings, plus they offer delicious food. Businessmen often use such services. After all, a beautiful girl around is a plus to one's mission status. And of course, it's even more status-enhancing to spend time with a foreign girl. In general, many girls work in the host club business, especially in the Roppongi district of Tokyo, where life flows in its own special way. Locals describe it more as a crazy neighborhood where anything is possible. Lucie was forced to go to such datings. She wasn't the most popular hostess in her institution, and in this case, in the club Casablanca, the girl was left with a condition: either go to a certain number of meetings or lose her job. In principle, there was a rather rigid system of hierarchy. Girls were divided according to their popularity, and there are even ratings, which sometimes had on the entrances themselves. The manager of the establishment can send the client any, gradually changing the girls to spend as much time as possible in the establishment. After all, their job is to get the client to linger in the club and buy as many cocktails as possible. Lucie went to meet the man on Saturday, July 1st, 2000, and immediately disappeared afterwards. Louise was the first to raise the alarm. Lucie had told her that the man she went with would bring her back by 8 p.m., but she didn't turn up at 8 p.m. or later. Lucie herself didn't say who she went out with, but she had spent time with the same man before and described him as nice but strange. The host club didn't give Louise any information either. As a result, the British woman reckoned her friend would eventually return and began to wait. But Sunday passed and there was not even a call from Lucie, and the girl went to the police on Monday, where she told them that her friend was missing. However, she didn't specify to the police a small detail. The girls worked in a host club, which is illegal on a tourist visa, so she had to keep silent about this fact of biography. The girl lied that her friend had gone on a date with a Japanese man, and at 7 o'clock in the evening she called and promised to return in an hour. The only truth from this turned out to be that the British woman did call her friend, apparently from a car. Louise said that there were distinctive sounds during the call. The police didn't stop there, and Louise went even further. She contacted the British vice consul the same day. He asked her about paid dates and was amazed that British women gave their business cards to men they didn't know. He was surprised to discover that the girls were constantly competing with each other for private dates. The vice consul of Britain wasn't as naive as Louise and immediately assumed that it wasn't the case of disappearance, but a real kidnapping. After Louise had left the consul office, she received a phone call from an unknown number. She answered, thinking it was Lucie calling to tell her where she was and what was wrong with her, but a man spoke on the other side of the phone. He stated that he was calling on the request of Louise's friend. My name is Akirara Gagi. I'm informing you that Lucie has joined a new sect and is now undergoing training. She's fine. She will be here for at least a week. She's showing better behavior here than at the host club and will be able to pay off her 7k pounds loan debt. Louise asked to get her friend on the phone, but was told that that was all the information and she wouldn't see Lucie again. As Louisa had not traveled very far from the consulate, she went straight back there and told them about the strange call. They told her to go to the police and tell them everything she knew. So she did, and of course, Louise found Lucie's parents who lived in Kent, Britain. Lucie's mom, Jane, answered the phone. It turned out that Lucie had told her parents that she had gone to Japan to work in a bar and live with her friend's aunt. Her mother didn't want to let her daughter go to Japan until the very last moment. She was frightened by the distant country and incomprehensible work. But how can a bartender earn so much money in just 3 months? In the end, after the disappearance in the family, it was decided to go to Tokyo. Her father went alone with another daughter, Sophie. At first, Sophie decided to go alone, but Jane didn't like that. One of her daughters had already disappeared. She persuaded Tim, the father, to go at once, but he couldn't. Mother and father fought again. Sophie went with her friend Lucie, and the news about the missing girl in Japan was already all over the news. Journalists dug up everything, even in the era before the internet. They found out about her work in a nightclub and all the other delights of life in Tokyo. The tabloids even reported that the girl lived in a dormitory and suffered from depression. Many reporters went to Tokyo to be on the front lines of events. A week later, Lucie's father, Lucie Blackman, arrives in Tokyo and the case is wrapped up. During the G8 summit in Japan in July 2000, British Prime Minister Tony Blair attended. Tim had the opportunity to personally meet with Blair and share his story. While the Prime Minister wasn't widely favored among the public, he pledged to exert every effort in the case of the missing British girl and promised to enlist the help of his Japanese counterpart, Yoshiro Mori. It's worth noting that the girl ceased contact on July 1st. A team of 150 police officers were dedicated to the case. Tim practically resided in Japan, making frequent trips there, holding regular press conferences, and being as open as possible in communication with others. It seemed he understood that to prevent Lucie's story from fading into obscurity, he needed to keep it in the public eye constantly. Consequently, criticism emerged almost immediately. Some believed Tim's grieving process was off, while others accused him of not being genuinely concerned and merely capitalizing on his daughter's disappearance. This likely contributed to the favorability of Lucie's mother, Jane, among many people. Arriving in Japan in September, she harbored no illusions of locating her daughter. "I knew I wouldn't find her. I just wanted to be in the same country," she remarked. Jane, unlike her ex-husband, rarely engaged with the press and preferred to keep a low profile. In essence, she was deeply sad on herself. Nonetheless, the search for the girl persisted. For instance, the family established a secure telephone hotline shortly after arriving in Japan, intended for receiving any calls that could potentially lead to Lucie's whereabouts. In many of these instances, individuals call in and share whatever details they recall to the best of their ability. However, more often than not, the information doesn't lead to any significant breakthrough. Numerous callers reported sightings of a tall, blonde girl resembling Lucie in various places around Roppongi, but it turned out not to be her each time. Then, one day, the phone rang again. The caller was an English woman who, like Lucie, had worked as a hostess in Japan 4 years ago. She recounted an encounter with one of her clients who had persistently invited her to his coastal home, promising to treat her to a delicious dinner. Eventually, the girl agreed and went. The client served her alcohol, and at some point she passed out attributing it to simply having too much to drink. He might have been snapping pictures of me. When I woke up the next morning, my clothes were in the laundry. The client was aware that I needed a few days off. The girl strongly suspected that the client didn't just drug her, but also took advantage of her. However, she felt too embarrassed to speak up about it right away and hesitated to share her experience later on. In October, another call came in, this time from a former hostess from Canada named Donna. She recounted her experience of working in Japan back in 1996. One of her clients, named Castle, had invited her to dinner at his coastal home. He picked her up in a luxurious Ferrari from the city and invited her to admire the ocean view. There, he offered her a taste of a rare Filipino herbal wine, after which Donna promptly lost consciousness. Subsequent calls followed a similar pattern. All the girls reported being drugged at the client's home and having no memory of what transpired afterwards. One of them even mentioned noticing a red light before losing consciousness, which seemed suspiciously like a video camera. I must also commend the police efforts. Lucie Blackman requested that they trace Lucie's call on the day she went missing, but the officers declined, citing privacy concerns and lack of technology. However, it later became evident that they simply did not want to invest effort into Lucie's case. The breakthrough came quite easily. Tim garnered support from Lord Chancellor Derry Irene, and suddenly, like magic, the police were able to trace all the calls. Subsequently, they even managed to track down the man responsible for kidnapping hostess Donna. He turned out to be Judzi Ibarra, residing in a luxury apartment complex along the coast. Ibarra, although not particularly attractive, was quite wealthy, involved in the construction business. This man was of Japanese Korean descent, and for some reason he concealed details about his past. He avoided being photographed, and there were few traces of his presence in the apartments. The police sealed off all his residences and discovered chloroform, sedatives, and another illegal substance used for drugging purposes. The drug caused intoxication very similar to alcohol and depressed the functions of the central nervous system. The police also found diaries Ibarra had kept for 13 years, since 1983. There were references to a game of conquest. The name of 209 women were listed, and next to them there were notes of the drugs he used to feed his victims. The diary also described Ibarra's gruesome, perverted fantasies. He also had a whole archive of records of the abuse of each victim, which lasted an average of 12 hours. But Lucie was not on these tapes, nor was there any sign of her in his flat where he committed the crimes. During interviews, he claimed he did not know who Miss Blackman was, nor did he know whether she was dead or alive. It was not until 4 months later that the forensic team decided to return to the seaside house again. This time they took a dog and a GPR with them. On the 5th day of their search, they found a bag of body parts. It was found in one of the caves on the coast. There was a hand, feet, and ankles, and a pair of cotton gloves. A little later, 3 more bags were found, all of them full of body parts that had been separated with a chainsaw. There was also a layer of concrete containing a shaved head. As soon as reporters learned about it, they immediately arrived at the site, and already in the middle of the day, a helicopter was circling over the gruesome finds. Lucie's family thus learned about the found remains from the news. Teeth casts completely coincided with the data from the girl's dental records. In her mouth, they found traces of a drug used for intoxication and sedation, as well as some black substance. Surprisingly, the police couldn't justify the delay in locating the girl's remains, nor could they explain why they didn't apprehend the perpetrator sooner, as all signs pointed to him in September. Eventually, Ibarra confessed to the crime, admitting that he had indeed encountered the girl and exploited her, though he denied any role in her death. In December 2001, the court charged him with kidnapping. The evidence was compelling. He had been seen with Lucie on the day she vanished and had purchased a chainsaw and plastic bags. Alongside Lucie's case, he faced additional charges related to offenses against other girls. The trials dragged on, and he wasn't sentenced until 2007. The hearings lasted just a month. In his defense, he argued that his alleged victims had willingly taken drugs and engaged in paid sexual activities with him, claiming it was all consensual. He was deemed sane and found guilty on all charges related to other victims, but not in Lucie's case. The evidence, including Lucie's body, was considered circumstantial. However, in December 2008, he was convicted in the Lucie Blackman case. Japanese justice can appear peculiar at times. Judges frequently consider the confessions of the perpetrators themselves. Initially, Ibarra denied any involvement. There is a widespread belief that Ibarra left numerous clues and could have been apprehended much earlier, even as far back as 1992, but this never occurred. Lucie's family was shattered by her death. Her mother turned to psychic science and blamed her husband, while Tim established a foundation in Lucie's memory, which drew public criticism. Interestingly, a friend of Ibarra's offered Tim 100 million yen as compensation, which became the foundation's initial funding. Despite the noble intentions, Tim faced backlash both from Jane and the public, who deemed it blood money. Meanwhile, Lucie's brother dropped out of college due to a nervous breakdown, and her sister Sophia attempted suicide shortly after Lucie's ashes were interred. Sophia spent 9 months in rehab battling depression. Japan is known for its safety and low crime rate. Perhaps that's why many girls flock there in search of easy, enjoyable, and lucrative work. Despite the Lucie Blackman case, their interest remains strong. However, if they are not cautious, another Lucie Blackman could emerge among them. Thanks for watching. I suggest checking out other stories on my channel. Click now to subscribe for more content.